Are you curious about what BDSM is and what all the letters stand for? And do you want to bring a little kink or a little bit more spank into your own personal life? If so, this Naked Talk with Beyond the Bedroom is for you. I'm Elizabeth Wood.
And I'm Dan Powers, and we're here tonight to talk about BDSM. So what does BDSM even stand for? A lot of people ask me this all the time, and it stands for bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, and sadomasochism. And it's really kind of a catch-all phrase for people who enjoy the world of a kink lifestyle.
So kink is a pretty generic term. I think that we should really start with the basics. Kink is kind of like an umbrella term, and BDSM, as we'll go more deeply into, that's part of the kink world and the kink lifestyle. You can be kinky just because, let's say for a woman, I wear men's underwear, or I have a foot fetish, or I like to dress up in a certain way when I'm engaging with my partner. So BDSM absolutely falls under kink. It's a category of kink. So I think, for all of our audience members, that may be a really important distinction. And you can be kinky without ever diving into the world of BDSM.
Yeah, kink can cover a lot of different things. BDSM is a little bit more specific, although BDSM is a fairly large variety of different types of play as well. As long as it's done safe and consensually, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's also really a great modality for connecting with one's partner.
Okay, so B, let's start with the bondage.
Okay.
Describe a little bit of that.
Bondage can be a lot of things. You see, 50 Shades of Grey really came out and started people in the conversation on what do they call it, mommy porn?
Mommy porn, yeah.
Mommy porn, yeah. And bondage is really, just having somebody in a position where they can't move. And that can be done with handcuffs. That can be done with rope. That can be done with ties. I know I've done that in the past. Silk scarves, whatever it is that's immobilizing someone from being able to resist or participate. And one of the things that's really valuable about bondage for a lot of people is that you have to completely surrender into who's providing whatever pleasure it is that they're providing to you, whether that's through kissing or sex or caressing or anything else. You just have the ability to completely let go and take whatever it is that's given to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great question. Great answer. Should we go into the D?
Okay,
there are two meanings of the letter D.
All right, so dominance and discipline. Dominance is really like, you'll hear a lot of times people call it topping. And dominance is really about asserting your control. It's a power play game that's played between two people.
To consensual people.
Right, to consensual people. And what we're talking about here, I want to make very clear, outside of abuse. This is not an abusive kind of situation. This is consenting adults that are participating in these activities. So we want to stress and make sure that that's really clear for everybody to understand. But dominance is really the role playing where you're taking control of someone and you essentially have their life in your hands and you're dominating them in every way. Versus submission, which I know is on the S side, but we'll get to that now, is you're submitting to that person. So in the rope play, for example, or bondage play, that's a part of that as well. So you're submitting to someone's will in a certain way. And in the dominant world, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got them tied up. You can have them wrapped up in saran wrap or just through verbal command. Say, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Don't move your hands. You can't work with your hands. You can't touch back. You can't explore me. You absolutely can do that through a verbal command, if you will.
Right.
Okay.
And then discipline is the form of basically disciplining someone. You give them a command, and if they don't submit to your command, then you discipline them. I know people that really like to be disciplined. They will purposely do things wrong so that they will get spanked, for example. I just met a woman recently that was like that. Really fun person. And Yeah, it's just another form of consenting adults. It's not, I'm paddling you because you're a bad person. It's all in the name of play, and what we're talking about anyway.
Yeah, in the BDSM context that we're talking. Okay, so let's move on. Oh, one thing that I also, Dan touched a little bit about it, on it, is a top is the same thing as a dom. That's the person who, in this agreed upon
Dom meaning dominant.
Yeah, dom, D-O-M, short for dominant. That's where that person and his sub or bottom have made that arrangement to role play in that particular type of power exchange. So there are three types of positions, if you will: the top / dom, the sub / bottom, and then there's a person who may go between, and they're called a switch. So we just really want to supply you with as much languaging and as much information as we can, and then hopefully that will answer a bulk of your questions.
Right.
So,
and I also want to make very clear here as well that we're only talking about the top level here of the BDSM world. There are people that live this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and people that are really into it that go to professional dungeons or are professional dominatrices?
Dominatrix would be woman.
Dominants. There you go.
Dominant, dominatrix is the woman, maybe the dominant.
Yeah.
I would call the man.
But anyway, just so you know, so it's kind of like 50 Shades of Grey. A good friend of mine who runs a Denver sanctuary said that after 50 Shades of Grey came out, a lot of people were calling her saying, oh, this sounds really cool. I would like to try this out, see what it's all about. And she had to really explain to him that 50 Shades of Grey really doesn't describe adequately what BDSM really is, or at least people who live
as
lifestyle.
a lifestyle, yeah.
Right, as a lifestyle. It's nice to do some light spanking sometimes, especially if you're just getting into it. But for people who are really immersed in this, it can be a little overwhelming to people who are just getting into it. So, in fact, our friend has a night she calls Gateway Night, which is an introduction to the BDSM world, and people can come and learn the etiquette and a little bit about what's going on without getting completely overwhelmed.
Okay, so let's move on with the S and stick more to program.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
carried away.
So I'll be the dom here. Let's stick to program, honey. No. Submission and or sadism. That's what the S stands for. Can you describe those?
Right. So submission we talked about a little bit already. You're submitting to someone. You're basically relinquishing all control to this person. And I do want to add a caveat that in the BDSM world, there are what's known as safe words. And safe words allow you to really have control. So even though you are the submissive, it's really you that has the control over anything that goes on. So if something's going on that you're not happy with, you can stop it. Sadism is somebody who likes to inflict pain. They like to give pain. They like to dish it out. And again, as long as it's in a safe, sane, consensual way, that's actually good and fun. People actually enjoy that. And the sadists that are not good are the ones that are doing it without consent, causing problems for people that are the ones that we don't like, and the ones that can give the BDSM world a bad name.
Right. And then masochism. Masochist.
The person who likes self-pain.
No, who likes to be inflicted with that pain, because it's not necessarily that they're actually doing it to themselves.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's not.
Yeah. Thank you. It's not that they are giving themselves pain. They're hurting themselves. It's somebody who is giving it to them, and they're there to receive that pain. There's
or sensation.
Right. The sensation of that pain. And we'll get into a little bit later, but the whole idea of sensation play and what goes along with that, and pain, and how pain can actually be very pleasurable as well once somebody's aroused and the proper endorphins are running in their bodies.
Yeah. So it actually brings up a really good point that is one we definitely want to share with you. BDSM isn't necessarily about pain. It's about sensation. And if we think about the entire spectrum of sensation, we have pain and pleasure on, let's just say, the opposite ends of that spectrum, and a whole variety of sensations in between. So, you know, Dan brought up that really good point. We just want to make sure that we don't say that all BDSM is about pain. It can be about really erotic, really highly charged states of arousal, and at that point, what may feel painful to us, like if somebody slapped me right now, I'm sorry to say I'm not really that aroused. And so that would feel like a very stinging, very sharp, and unwanted. Yeah, unwanted, and I wouldn't have been prepared for it. But if we were doing some type of role play and I was aroused, and in that situation, I can hardly imagine myself, but if I were the submissive and had negotiated that some spanking was part of that particular experience I was going to share, then that pain, that smack on the butt or wherever it may be, the side of the thigh, that is more than likely going to heighten my state of arousal once aroused. And actually, I think it's a really good point. You want to go into the very thin divide at a certain point where pain and pleasure share the same side of, or are just the opposite side of the coin?
Sure. So one of the things, one of the traditions that we follow is the Quodoshka, Native American version of spiritual sexuality, sacred sexuality. And they like to place everything on the wheel. And if you look at the wheel, for trying to understand the different modalities, it goes from pleasure all the way around to pain. And if you notice, pleasure and pain are right next to each other on that circle.
Right there.
And so it's pretty easy to actually jump that divide to the pleasure part of what's going on when it comes to pain. And as we said before, pain, when endorphins are running, it can actually feel very pleasurable. A lot of women like their nipples tweaked, men even as well. Neck biting, things like that. You don't go up and bite somebody's neck or tweak their nipples at the very beginning of a lovemaking session, but as arousal starts to happen, then that pain can actually add a little bit of charge to the sexual pleasure. And that's a lot of what's going on in BDSM world as well. You get to a point where that pain becomes pleasurable. And a lot of people think that, oh, well, somebody who's in the BDSM, you know, they must have had an abusive childhood,
they must kick their dogs, they must pull the legs off of spiders. That's not it at all.
No, it's not at all. In fact, there was a study done that compared normal people to some people that were in the BDSM world, and they found no differences between the two. Whether there was, you know, of course, there's some people who are going to have child abuse in both sides, whether they were the normal or people in the BDSM
Quote
world.
normal.
Right, quote unquote normal, or do as Reed says, the what do they call them? The weird one?
Like the abnormal quotes. Yeah, what's normal? We don't know anymore. So that's Reed Mahalka, our dear friend and a mentor and peer. So
I was going to wear my sex geek shirt, I forgot.
Okay,
oh,
well,
anyway,
whatever.
Wardrobe change later.
No wardrobe changes. We have a lot of material to cover. And we have some questions that we're going to answer as we go along. One of our viewers submitted a number of different...
know who we are?
We did. I said I'm Elizabeth Wood, and you said,
sorry.
I'm Dan Powers, and he forgot to say, we're your host for tonight's Naked Talk with Beyond the Bedroom. So I've just get that in. So, not if it's not wanted. So anyway, I think it's actually probably a really good point here to talk about the consent and the level of negotiation. Actually, they've found that pairs, couples, dom, sub, top-bottom relationships, the level of communication is actually something that the quote, normal world really should take as an example. There is so much communication when BDSM is done right. And, you know, the people in the lifestyle and the people that go to the membership-only clubs, let me reiterate, or let me state, they're masters at this. They have really learned their craft, and toward the later end of the hour, we'll go over the different types. But there are people who teach this. If rope bondage is your thing, go and learn rope bondage from someone who's incredibly skilled at this craft.
Because it can be very dangerous. I've taken a rope class, a shibari class, and shibari is the art of Japanese rope bondage. I'm having a hard time talking. Anyway, there's a lot of issues that can come up where you can cut off blood circulation to one of your appendages.
If you don't know how to tie it appropriately.
Right. Or you can cut off nerves. You can create nerve damage, permanent nerve damage, by doing some of this stuff. So I don't want to scare you, but I just want to make sure that you understand that some of the stuff can be very dangerous. And a Dom...
When done wrong.
When done wrong, right. So when a Dom has been trained and understands his or her trade, then it can be very, very good, very pleasurable, and very safe.
Yeah, and it's almost actually like an art form. It's quite an experience to watch a skilled master demonstrate their craft, and we'll get into how you might see a demonstration a little bit later on. But what happens in the lifestyle is there are these different words. Again, I think it's really important to give them all the language. The lifestyle is somebody who does this as part of their whole broad spectrum of sexual activity or experiences. So what happens is they'll negotiate for a scene, whether it's with the current partner or a new partner that they're going to play. It's called play with. So they set up a scene.
And a scene is just a scenario that you're going to run through in this play.
So a scene might go, I'd like to explore, if I'm the sub, I'd like to explore, again, that's really hard for me to imagine. I'd like to explore with you, if you're going to be the top, some rope play, some rope bondage. I don't want my feet to be bound. I don't want anything, across my mouth or too tight around my neck. So I set up all the criteria that we then, would agree to in this scenario. Would you like to, and Dan as the top would make some suggestions, and we would take, even before we get into the play space, we would go into a deep discussion. He would know my safe words, and no is not really an appropriate safe word.
Right.
So,
we can talk about safe words in a little bit too, but yeah, it's really the negotiation process that goes on for people who are in the scene, which is meaning people that are in the BDSM world, is really valuable. And I agree with Elizabeth that it would be really valuable if people would use that in their, not their everyday sex, but sex with new partners, even partners that they're currently in relationship with, to really understand and communicate what it is they want, what it is they don't want. Because from one day to the next, we've got different things that are going to be pleasurable to us or not pleasurable to us. And in the BDSM world, if you are going to get spanked, for example, and you're just not into it, you've got a headache or something's been going on for you that you're just not in the mindset for it, you're going to have a real miserable time when that happens. If you
agree to it. So,
right, if you agree to it anyway.
Yeah.
Versus, the everyday act of, the act of intercourse, a lot of people just kind of go through the motions. They're not really into it. They're not really interested. But, yeah, I can go ahead and have intercourse because, what's it going to hurt? And my partner might be happier for doing it, whatever. But there's two really good books, Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns, and SM 101. And I forget the authors right offhand, but we'll put them up on the recording later.
Yeah, we have a lot of resources for you later. So those are two of them, and we'll remind you again at the end.
Right, but in those books, they've got a whole checklist that you can go through saying what it is that you're interested in and what it is you're not interested, which I think is really valuable.
Yeah, you really have to know your yes, your no's, and your maybes. And what ends up happening is we table those maybes until they're either a clear yes or a clear no. An excited yes, not just, oh, well, yes, I guess so. No, it has to be, yeah, I want to try that out. I'm willing to explore, knowing full well that I, when using the safe words, can stop the activity at any point. or I can reduce the activity at any point where it feels like it's getting too intense. I'm building up to, you know, that line, that edge that I don't want to cross, but I want to play, you know, in the space. If this is where I would cross over into somewhere I don't want to go, I might want to play in this area a little bit more. So I would use a safe word that might indicate a little bit slower, a little bit softer, a little bit different, whatever it may be. So this negotiation happens and ends definitely before you go into that play space. And I think we should talk about some play spaces right now, the difference between what a couple might want to do, a pair might want to do in the privacy of their own home. There are some private dungeons, those owned by the DOMs or the dominatrix, and that's a little bit more private, small, select groups of invited friends, if you will. And then there are public dungeons throughout the country, LA, Chicago, here in Denver, but those are membership-only clubs. And
typically, yeah.
Typically, membership-only clubs. And what you'll see if you go to the one here in Denver, we'll give you the resource later, is people playing with their craft in the same space as some newbies. So I'll give it up and I'll make myself vulnerable. For a research experiment, I'd never actually been to a BDSM club. So I went in and I had the learning that the owner of this particular club gifts to all the newbies, where she sits us down, she talks about the rules, the etiquettes, what's permissible. She talks so wonderfully about the safety, you know, points out who the people are, the dungeon, are they called managers? Like safety managers, those people going around the dungeon to make sure that both top and bottom are kept safe at all times. They will actually cut off a scene if they think somebody's in danger. So she supplies you with a ton of information before you even cross the threshold into the dungeon. And I'm going to tell you, you need to be prepared. I, as a former sex therapist, I kind of thought I knew a lot. I knew nothing once I walked through those doors. And there were some things that upset me first time, you know, seeing some of this stuff, because I walked in on a bunch of different scenes. You can be a voyeur, again, rule of etiquette. You're never supposed to step into a scene that's ongoing. Never. You're not supposed to touch or do anything. So I was
unless invited.
Unless invited, absolutely, or previously negotiated. So I was walking around just taking a look, and some things really disturbed me. I went right back out to her. She's a friend, and I said, "Okay, you got to take me off the ledge here because I'm all worked up." And she sat me down and very calmly said, "I want you to remember that everything is consensual. All of those people playing in all of those scenes have negotiated long and hard, and they have agreed to everything that's happening in there. They all have their safe words and the dungeon monitors." And she really helped me understand, again, that it's consensual. And she invited me to go back in with that renewed understanding, and I saw it not so much as shocking, but oh, I'm beginning to get it now. So that's one of the things that we really want to differentiate between home play, where you're taking I don't have any. Where are clothespins when you need them? Like when you take a simple clothespin and put it on an aroused nipple. Oh, don't go get them, honey. Okay, well, we don't know what he has here. Oh, my. No, I wonder what he's going to bring out. This is for, oh, here we go. We got a little bit of a nipple clamp here. What I would suggest is that you, if you do want to play with it, go get the clothespins.
It also doubles as a Home Depot clamp. So.
Yeah, this might be a little tight for a small nipple. I'm not going to do it because I'm not aroused again. But, you know, this type of thing, playing at home with some soft, fluffy pink handcuffs, a silk scarf across the eyes to, you know, dim the vision, that's very different than what happens at a BDSM club.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the difference between a private home, a play group, or even a professional dungeon, a public dungeon. You know, one of the things that I would say is a lot of people think, oh my God, I would never go to a public location where other people might be able to see me. But honestly, it's the safer way to go. because you've got people that are there who understand what's going on or watching specifically for issues that might happen. For example, you tie your partner up and you've got the rope around their wrist too tight and their hands are starting to turn blue, and you don't know it because you're kind of caught up in what's going on and the excitement and arousal of it. The dungeon monitors will actually be there to see what's going on and say, hey, they'll come over and say, look, this doesn't look safe. Do you know what's going on? And they can pretty much tell when there's newbies like me when I go in there, and they'll understand what to do, and they'll take care of it.
They can cut that rope off immediately. They're all, and actually part of safety, if you're going to do home play, part of your safety kit is having a pair of really reliable rope scissors right there at the ready. That actually is part of the mastery of whatever particular craft, is actually ensuring that you have those safety devices very nearby, because you are both people in that scene, or all the people in that scene, if they're multiples, are going to get caught up in all of the chemical cocktails that are released. So definitely want to implore on all of our audience members that if you're going to explore this, get some teachings, read some of the books that we have mentioned, resources, and if you're here locally, or whether you're here locally or not, explore your neighborhood dungeon.
Your neighbors.
Your neighborhood dungeon. And that's where they're going to have these gateway nights, is what they're called here in Denver, where you can sit down and you can ask whatever questions you have so that you are safe, whether or not you ever play in a membership-only dungeon or whether you take this at home. Because that's really what, Dan and I are educators. That's what this is all about. Giving you the information and making sure that you're safe if this is something that you want to explore.
Yep.
So
and there's a variety of things that are out there that people have no idea even exists. So it's really valuable to go to the public dungeons. There's even conventions. They have one here in Denver called Thunder in the Mountains that allow you to see different things that are going on and talk to people about what their experiences are with it, why it is that they like it. All those kinds of thoughts and ideas that might intrigue you if you decided to jump into it for yourself. And then you can also step into it very slowly. You don't have to go into a full scene where you're in a rope suspension, unless you want to. And the top should really understand where you're at and be able to get you out of it very quickly.
Yeah.
Elizabeth talked about the safe words. There's the typical ones almost by default are stop, red, yellow, green. Green says, yeah, this is great, everything's good.
To go.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Yellow is, hey, we're coming to an area where I'm a little uncomfortable, whatever that might be. It might be too
close
painful.
To my edge.
Exactly. But what that tells the top is, I'm going to reel it back a little bit and not go in that direction any further, or maybe, but a little bit later. Red says, stop. Absolutely, stop right now.
Perfect timing, honey. Do that again.
Stop.
And the scene ends. The scene absolutely ends.
Yeah. That could be an emergency. For example.
Actually, it's red. It's not stop. It's red. That stops the scene.
Isn't that what it said?
Stop? Well, because we can't rewind.
Yeah.
It's red.
Yeah,
as soon as somebody says red, that stops the entire scene.
Yep.
Yeah. And
the word that you use really needs to be a word that isn't going to come up in normal situations.
Okay, so let me do it. No, no, no. I mean, come on. We use that all the time. Or, oh, stop, stop. I mean, we use that all the time,
please
too.
Don't.
Or, oh, please stop. I mean, those, unfortunately, that can be very confusing. I mean, I could be saying, please stop, and somebody hears it as, oh, please stop, or no, no. So we have...
I don't know that I would hear it like that.
So that's why the BDSM world has really come up with yellow, oh, let me start it. It's a stoplight, people. Green, everybody goes. Yellow, you better be careful. You're coming up on something that could be dangerous. And red is an absolute stop. You don't cross that line. So I think that was a pretty good example.
And as far as rope play is concerned, I have trauma shears. So when we get into a situation, I've got those trauma shears nearby, and if stop is called and I can't get them out of that very quickly, and a lot of the rope stuff I do, you can get them out very quickly. But if not, if something gets tangled, then I've got those scissors to make sure that I don't cause harm to somebody, like nerve damage or asphyxiation or anything like that.
Asphyxiation.
What did I say?
I don't know.
Asphyxiation.
Okay, so I think we will kind of shift a little bit slightly. What Dan had said, I don't know if you all caught it, but what type of people do this? Why would I be into it? Actually, who is into it, and why would anybody either want to inflict pain or receive pain? Again, the different hormones and oxytocin and dopamine and opiates that are released, we'll talk about the difference in what's released in a dom and what's released in a sub. No, I don't know. We'll talk about that in a second, but there are all types of people who go into this. It's part of fantasy. It's part of a very expansive, let's just say, sexual experience toolbox. It's something that you don't have to become a lifestyle member. You can try it once and decide that it's not for you. You know, it's all for you to explore and experiment with and expand your range, if you will, of experiences.
And as they say, it's only kinky the first time.
No, then it becomes part of your normal. So anyway, all types of people. I mean, you have professionals, you have non-professionals, you have average Joes, you have professional masters. It runs the full gamut. There's no right or wrong. It's not all people who have had a history of abuse, as we said earlier. People on either side, those who are the abusers and those who have received abuse. It's not that at all. No. In every spectrum, you're going to have instances, but you want to share about how there's the release when some people actually can recreate a rape scene and how powerful that is?
Yeah, so there's been some studies, and I can't remember them offhand, that have shown that people who have had abuse like a rape in their past, where they had no control, it was non-consensual, they will replay that scene in a dungeon where it is consensual, where they do have the control to say stop at any time. And when I say stop, like red. Using that safe word of let's stop this thing immediately. That allows them to regain the control that they didn't have during the actual rape that took place on them, you know, however many years prior to that.
And they do it with someone who they feel very safe with, someone who they trust. They're obviously entrusting them. A lot of discussion and support is had around the experience, if you will, before that scene is ever stepped into. And then if it's a man or a woman, whoever was the victim in that, he or she gets to take power over and use his or her voice in a way that they weren't able to during that scene, and it's proven very, very cathartic. I would not try this at home. Again, seek out a top or a dom who could explore that with you. And a lot of emotions are purged during that experience, and it can free some people from something where they felt an absolute loss of control. Because ultimately, the person who is the submissive actually has the control of the situation from the get-go. So let's see, I definitely wanted to talk about that because when we have an intense experience, we can dump a lot of the feelings or a lot of the stories associated with it. It's almost as if it allows sort of us to crack through another level. We're not cracking you open, but we're creating more space for that trauma to be released, that drama to be managed or taken under your control so that you feel more empowered moving, or that woman or man feels more empowered in their definitive yes or no. So even if you're not recreating a rape scene, the type of people who explore the BDSM play, they like to and can often go through a cathartic experience where, again, they're purging intense emotions, intense sensations, and walking away from that scene feeling refreshed and energized and more confident in their yes and more confident in their very clear no.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually, this might be a good time to talk about the different spaces that you can go into.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about subspace? And then I'll
Sure.
Okay.
So one of the benefits of BDSM is something called subspace. So for the bottom or submissive that's in there, this is why they call it subspace, there is a release of endorphins into your bloodstream and opiates that cause you to go into almost a mind-altering state. And I've experienced it once before, and it's really kind of weird, in a good way weird. It's not something you normally have, but it's or that I normally have walking around. I've never experienced it in any other way, and it's really a cool sensation. You kind of drop out of a little bit of reality, what's going on. You're still cognizant and present, but in a way that you're kind of dopey.
Yeah, you're
I don't want to make it sound bad, because it's actually a really good thing. You're
flooded with, as Dan said, the endorphins, the natural opiates that, let's just think, like acupuncture. That acupuncture will go into a specific trigger point and release like a natural opiate. Well, the sensations that are released in the bottom or subs body, it's a chemical cocktail, adrenaline, the opiates, the endorphins, all of that, because it's such an intense experience, they flood the system to create that subspace. And so the sub can be a little woozy. We're going to talk about aftercare in a moment. They can be a little bit disoriented, and that's why we take great, or people in the BDSM world take great care of each other when the scene is over. So I'll talk a little bit. It's called aftercare. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the top space. And a really good friend of mine and a wonderful supporter of ours, she gave me a lot of this information because she thinks it's very, and as do I, she thinks it's very important for us to share. The top or dom also may go through an experience, and they call it a top space. So the subspace Dan just described, but the top space is a little bit different. The top space is where all this dopamine is released in the top's, male or female, that top's body, and it's almost as if it it does, she says, creates this sense of like a hyper focus. You're focused on your play partner, almost to the point where the rest of the room might disappear. The surroundings around you are just not part of your experience. You're so very focused on what the experience is and that exchange that is happening. So the top, has all of the dopamine and the natural opiates and the endorphins. It's just a different chemical cocktail. And then there's something that's called the top drop. Often, some tops can experience some sadness, some shame, or some guilt after, and probably those who are first kind of venturing out into the top world, like, wow, what did I just do? And they may have some remorse or some guilt about the scene that they just participated in with consent. So there was a question, like one of the questions that came across, so this actually kind of answers it, is have you heard of tops experiencing any sense of shame or guilt afterward? And if so, how should this be handled? So that's what that person, the top drop is actually what that person is referring to. Like maybe an overwhelming sense of guilt and shame that might flood them after they inflicted some kind of consensual force on their sub. So what to do about it? So it's self-care, self-care, self-care. We have to make sure that self-care mechanisms are put in place for the top and the sub before going into the scene. And we want to make sure that that self-care is adequately provided so that neither the top or sub be dropped or put into a place that's so significantly down that they can't, rebound and come back from it. So part of what aftercare may mean is wrapping the sub in a blanket, definitely getting water, definitely grounding with food, taking care of, getting adequate sleep after a scene, pampering yourself, whether that means, getting a massage or a haircut, not a haircut, asking your partner afterwards for a head massage, a foot massage, something. You can even ask your...
Soak in a hot tub.
Yeah, soak in a hot
bathtub. Epsom salts are great for that.
Yeah, but really making sure that you're grounded, that the subspace, it's as if all of those endorphins and chemical cocktail mixture, it's sort of absorbed back in your body, and you can go out of that scene and that environment safe and back into your everyday world. So it's also really important to get some validation, especially if there's a top drop, that, yes, this was consensual. I'm here for you. Thank you so much for sharing that experience with me. Getting feedback. How was that? Was that too hard? Did I hurt you? Did I not bring you the sensation that you wanted? And getting that adequate feedback and validation that, again, it was consensual, that person enjoyed it, they felt safe. That actually helps the top not drop too low.
Yeah, we actually heard a story from some friends of ours that kind of stepped and dabbled into the world of BDSM, and she was doing something where they were punching her, and her partner was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. That's not. I'm more about tantra and love and connection. And his partner said, no, I need this. This was something that was cathartic for me, and it's something that I want from our relationship. And if you can't do it, then I'm gonna have to find somebody who can. And he said, all right, I'll try to step into it. So that's a perfect scenario where somebody can feel that remorse, that guilt. It's like, okay, I'm punching my beloved, this person that I love very much, and I'm actually fist punching her, not in the face or anything like that.
That's called impact play.
Yeah.
And want to reiterate that was after a state of arousal, and
Absolutely.
it was something that she was asking for. And despite her partner's initial, I can't do that, he actually did go out and get the training. And now they incorporate, not every day, it's part of their sexual toolbox.
What do we know?
I think they told us it's just another tool in the box that they can use when they both are consenting.
Well, and to bring up arousal in their relationship. Yeah, changing things up is great for our relationships. It brings that added spark to our sex lives.
Yep. So that the punching or the hitting or the whatever, that's considered impact play, and it can be done a whole host of different ways. So I think that's a really good segue into our next segment is about the different types. I want to make sure, how much time do we have?
We've got like 5-10 minutes.
Ooh. Okay. Again, this is a huge topic.
About 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, about 5 minutes. I know that there are questions that have come in, and we're so happy for them. We might not get to them all. If this is really well received, we can come back for segment number 2, because it's a really rich subject and one that absolutely we want to hold that container and offer up as much safety to you all as possible.
Yeah, and there's so much available in the BDSM world, which is why I think it's so important. And people do get those cathartic experiences with it, and just enjoyment of it. It's really great.
Yeah, if you're curious, then go and explore with safety. So, all right, the different types of play. We talked about rope. We talked about bondage, which rope bondage. Rope is one form of bondage. So flogging.
Flogging, whipping.
Okay, so flogging. Explain a flog.
Oh, so a flog is. Oh, how do I describe a flog? It's
usually made out of leather.
Yeah, it's not necessarily, but it's got a bunch of strands attached to a handle, and then you can use that to
like floppy, leathery,
right,
finger-like things.
And there's a number of different styles to them. Some are more stingy than others. Some are thuddier than others because they've got a very heavy weight to them. There's some that sting. you bring out different kinds of sensations. So if you're interested in flogging, again, it's really good to go and talk to some people who are familiar with it, and they can show you what flogs are out there. I would hesitate to go to most of the sex stores that are out there because the stuff that they sell is usually crap. Cheap plastic kinds of things.
It's kind of for like costuming or one time only. But there are people who make beautiful, beautiful leather flogs, and you just have to search around for those. They're not cheap, people.
Yeah,
Again,
$150
in the BDSM world, you get what you pay for. So if you're going to go pick up for a Halloween costume a $12 flog, by all means, use it as a costume and throw it away. Your garbage man, if somebody does garbage picking, might be a little surprised. But nonetheless, throw it away. Don't use it for any type of serious play.
Yeah.
So
you could. I'm not going to say that all of them are bad, but most often the ones that are in the regular sex stores, like Fascinations that we have here in Colorado, are more for just like an introductory play.
Introductory home play. Yeah. Yeah, and then so.
And those can be okay.
Yeah. Good point. So we're kind of going from a little bit of the beginner stuff. There's spanking, which you do. There's a specific way to spank. With the cupped hand, not a flat hand. You have to make sure there are different body parts, which the sensation of spanking is actually more pleasurable rather than painful. Handcuffing, that's actually part of bondage. The more advanced, there are people out there who very, very skillfully do fire play. And that actually is administering a flame to another person's body. I've seen it once, I've watched it, and it's thrilling. And they're not, those people who are submitting, they're not being burned.
Yeah, my understanding of it is the fire, I think that what they use is alcohol, and they spread the alcohol in the body, and then they light it on fire and then wipe it out very quickly.
Immediately.
What it does is it singes the hair, so it burns that off, and then brings this very interesting sensation to the skin from that. But again, that's something I certainly wouldn't do without a lot of education. Yeah. Yeah,
go see a master. It's again, they're kind of art forms. They're really exciting to watch, and most masters are open to demonstrating their craft.
Oh yeah, they're very excited about it. They love to talk about it.
Yeah, because they're good at it. There's also knife play, blade play.
There's so much that's out there. I don't know if it's valuable to go through all the different things that are out there. Maybe more talk about what our audience could really step into and play with a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
So for people that aren't used to the scene of BDSM world, there's a lot of things that you can do at home that are perfectly safe and can add a lot of enjoyment and excitement to your love life. Tying somebody up to the bed. You can go out to the sex stores and get little handcuffs. You can get the mink handcuffs. You can tie somebody's hands.
You can use a scarf. You can use a necktie.
Exactly.
They're good for something.
Just be very cautious that when you tie something around somebody's wrist that you use 2 fingers in between whatever it is you're tying and their wrist so that you've got an adequate space for blood flow and no nerve damage. Do that as well around the ankles if you're going to do that. If you use handcuffs or something that's already made for it, then you're usually going to be okay because they just strap there. So like Sport Sheets has something like that where you can handcuff them to the bed, and they work great.
It's like Velcro. If you're going to use a lock and key, make sure you don't lose the key, because if you have to call somebody in, I'm wondering what kind of explaining you're going to be doing.
I'm sure the police would love to stop by and help her out.
Yeah. So Dan's right. There are so many options from beginner, intermediate, and advanced. The scenes that are described in 50 Shades of Grey, that was all private home play between
but all that stuff
Mr.
can be
Grey and I forgot her name already. Anastasia.
Yeah.
We're going to put up a lot of different resources. We here in the Denver area are fortunate enough to have the members only. It's called the Sanctuary.
Denver Sanctuary.
And the owner of the Sanctuary, she goes by Love Slave. She is more than happy to teach a beginner audience. You just have to look at which nights offer what they call the gateway. That's the intro.
The fourth Saturday of every month, she offers gateway.
Yeah, it is once a month. I'm not sure if it's the third or fourth. And explore. We're going to put a bunch of resources, the names of the books that Dan mentioned. There's also a documentary. I just want to make sure that I've answered all the questions that I saw that came over. And please submit more questions. We didn't have a lot of time to get to many of them.
Let's talk about some of the other things too.
I thought you said we didn't have much time.
No, but we talk a little bit about there's spanking. Spanking works as well. Again, one safety tip is do not spank on the spine, but the bottom portion of the buttocks is a great place.
The meaty part.
Yeah, the meaty part.
The fleshy meaty part. Yep. The sides of the thighs. For all those who have saddlebags, those can be lightly tapped to whatever your pleasure point is. And again, always after arousal.
Right, and you can build up to it too. Don't just haul off and whack them, but a lot of little spanking to kind of bring the blood to the skin, and then every once in a while you can throw in that a little bit harder one and check with your partner and see how she's doing or he's doing at that point, whether they want to continue or not. I would also, after you spank somebody, especially a really stinging spank, do a lot of caressing. That will help to soothe out that bitter stinginess as well.
And there's like scratching to hard scratching. I mean, if you want to draw blood, great, but make sure you're not going on a family summer vacation and wearing your bikini the next day, because somebody, cranny, might want to know what the lines down your back are. There's a light nuzzling and biting. There's all kinds of things to explore. The whole point of the matter is have fun. Certainly laugh about it. Certainly stop the activity if it's not fun, and try something else. If you try one of the different forms that we basically just touched upon, and you don't like it, that doesn't necessarily mean that BDSM isn't for you. You can try something else. Yeah. If you're here, go to the sanctuary, take a class with Love Slave, or at whatever local dungeon offers classes, because it really is, it's part of the mainstream now, thanks to the book and the movie that's soon to be released. Even Coda Copy, Kathy Lee Gifford and Coda, whatever her name is, on the Today Show, they were all talking about it when the book was released. So it's come into the public, the general conversation, and if you're curious, by all means explore.
Yeah, and feel free to email us as well if we don't know the answer to this, because this isn't our area of super expertise.
It's not our area of domain.
Right. We've got a lot of knowledge around it, but we can certainly point you in the direction of those who are knowledgeable and maybe answer some of the questions ourselves.
Yeah, and we're still learning and maybe contemplating what area we might want to explore together. And it's an art form. It's fun to watch. It's when done right, it can be a really enjoyable experience for the audience member or voyeur. Mm-hmm. Does that about wrap it up?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to remind everybody that Naked Talk is where we get naked in a conversation of sexuality, intimacy, and relationship. We strip down and expose the bare facts so that you can learn what it takes for your love to thrive. Lastly, we want to thank you all for being a part of this potent conversation, and even though it didn't seem like there was a lot of conversation, we'll get to the questions that we missed later. Thank you for submitting those. You can do so during the live broadcast and always ahead of time and afterwards. We also want to thank our sponsor, Tantra Dakini, the online resource for materials relating to spiritual and sacred sexuality. Without Tantra Dakini, we wouldn't be doing some of the great work we've been doing. Mm-hmm. TantraDakini.org. So check it out. We do Naked Talk the first and third Tuesday of every month. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
No, I think so.
Have fun. Yep. Thank you so much. Again, Dan and Elizabeth with Beyond the Bedroom.
Have a great night, everybody.
Have some fun and tell us about it later. Bye.
Bye.